Ben Hodges is a retired U.S. Army Lieutenant General, former commander at the U.S. Army Europe. Welcome to our program, General Hodges.
Daniel, thank you very much.
Ukraine hit 41 Russian bombers at 4 Russia's strategic aviation airfields, including nuclear-capable aircraft. As a result of this attack, Ukraine has destroyed almost 13 Russia's bombers, fully destroyed. What is your reaction to this operation?
Well, obviously, I'm impressed. I mean, the fact that Ukrainian intelligence was able to plan and prepare and execute this mission, keeping it secret for a year and a half, to get so deep inside Russia with trucks and drones. I mean, the whole thing is incredible, and I think people will be studying this for a long time. But I would also say on the more practical side, what's impressive and important is that this is a major dent in Russia's ability to keep killing innocent Ukrainian civilians. Despite the success of Ukrainian armed forces on the ground and in the Black Sea, we still had a problem with Russian bombers being able to launch cruise missiles from long distance to hit Ukrainian cities. And, as we know, killing the archer is better than trying to knock down all of the arrows. And this is what Ukraine has done. Ukraine has severely damaged the archer by destroying and damaging so many of these bombers. And this will mean much more difficult for Russia to keep killing innocent Ukrainian civilians.
It is also interesting that many of these destroyed Tu-95 bombers are no longer in production. In Russia, Russia cannot replace these bombers with a new one because Russia no longer produces Tu-95 and other bombers. What would this mean for Russian army?
Well, of course, they will, in order to try and salvage what they can, they will have to cannibalize, take parts off of one airplane to make another one operational. And I've seen pictures here in the last 24 hours of some of these bombers that were already being cannibalized, like one of them engines had been removed, for example. And so when you no longer produce something, that means you also probably are not producing the parts that would be needed for typical normal maintenance and upgrades. And so this is a capability that is greatly reduced for a very long time until they find another way to replace it. So this is not just a benefit for this week. This is a long-time benefit.
From your perspective, what does Vladimir Putin feel about this attack? Because he hasn't commented yet on this attack on Russia's strategic aviation. We haven't heard any kind of official statement from Kremlin, from Vladimir Putin or his inner circle.
Well, I would hate to have been a Russian general yesterday morning having to report for work to try to explain to the leadership what happened. How did we get penetrated? How did so many of our aircraft get destroyed? How did this happen? So I imagine, they're doing all the kind of looking for scapegoats, looking for explanations. We've seen the video of trucks being stopped everywhere, searched to see if there were other trucks loaded with drones. So there's going to be a lot of that. I would expect, and I'm sure that the Ukrainian government is already prepared for the probability of a retaliatory strike of some sort. Russia can't not respond, although it would be great if they didn't. But I think, they will have to do something that will be brutal. I think they also probably will try to get some of their bombers up in the air soon to do an extended mission to demonstrate to everybody that they still have capability. So a little bit of that will be deterrence. I imagine that will be part of it. I've seen excerpts of some of the so-called famous Russian talking heads, commentators saying now we really have to go do something against Ukraine, as if they've been holding back somehow. Um, I think this is a lot of rhetoric. And I think, again, the Ukrainian leadership, professional, cool, and I'm also sure this is not the only thing. I mean, the bombers got all the attention, but there was also a strike on a submarine, it looks like, up in the north. There were important bridges, military railroad bridges that were destroyed in the Bryansk area and Kursk. So this is Ukraine taking the war to Russia, and they seem to have the ability to keep doing this, which is so impressive to me.
Also, some pro-Kremlin, pro-Russian bloggers say that it is Russia's Pearl Harbor, as they compare Pearl Harbor to this attack of Ukraine on Russia's strategic aviation. Are they right? Is this right to compare this to battles?
Yeah, I think that's a ridiculous comparison by these Russian bloggers. First of all, Pearl Harbor, America and Japan were not at war. This was a surprise attack by the Empire of Japan against the United States. And then, of course, the United States entered the war. In this case, Russia has been at war with Ukraine for 11 years. And the night before this attack, so Saturday night, as you and your viewers know, Russia launched over 400 drones against Ukrainian targets. So the only possible comparison would be the strategic surprise that was achieved in this attack. But otherwise, any other comparisons, I think, are not helpful in understanding the impact.
Do you feel that this attack could open a window of opportunity for Ukraine to turn the tide of this war by waging this war inside Russia? If Ukraine continues to attack Russia's strategic and not only strategic aviation, what would this mean for the Russian side? And could this force Putin to make any kind of compromise at least?
Well, of course, now Russia is having to think about where do they have their Air Force, what bases are there, where do they have air defense, can they protect all the airfields, and can they protect all of their critical infrastructure, the oil and gas infrastructure, ammunition factories, all of these things. Because now they can see that every single thing inside Russia can be reached. This is a hell of a recognition now that Ukraine can touch every part of Russia with capability. So this is going to be a challenge for the air defense commanders of the Russian Federation, and also where do they put stuff? You remember, you'll be aware that in the Second World War, the Soviet Union moved a lot of their defense industry to the east of the Ural Mountains because they were concerned that the German Wehrmacht was getting too close and would capture or destroy it. So, now you cannot go hide behind the Ural Mountains anymore. You've got to find other ways to protect critical assets from the long reach of Ukrainian armed forces and Ukrainian intelligence. I think also it's clear, or at least it seems to me, that Ukraine is no longer hindered by anything, by U.S. policy or even European governments. Chancellor Merz the other day said that anything that Germany has provided to Ukraine can be used without restriction. So I would anticipate we're going to see more and more of these kinds of things. I certainly hope so.
And how do you see the main implications of this strike on Russia's aviation for global nuclear deterrence? Because some military experts believe that global nuclear powers would reconsider its protection of its own strategic aviation and could try to make any kind of better defense for them, basing on airfields, just try to protect this aircraft against any drone threats.
Yeah, well, I think, most of the European airfields that were built back during the Cold War days have, you know, the protected bunkers and so on, but they were not designed to protect against drones. So now you've got to have overhead protection, but also the doors. I mean, the entrance, so that drones could not fly in and, where one or two drones destroys a door, then another one comes in. I mean, so this is a different, more sophisticated defense that's required to protect against these kind of things. And I'm sure a lot of other people are thinking about how could they get truckloads of drones and park them next to, U.S., British, German, Italian uh, facilities. So this is the technology is not brand new, but the innovation, the way the Ukrainians did it, that's what's really remarkable to me. So how do you protect against that? And uh, again, you cannot protect everything, so you think you have to prioritize what you protect, but also you want to go after the ability of the enemy to actually do these things. Go kill that archer.
Let's also cover Pentagon's comments on this attack. A senior US defense official told CNN that Ukraine's attack showed a level of sophistication that they had not seen before. Have they underestimated Ukraine again?
So, for sure, many people have consistently underestimated Ukraine. There's no doubt about it, including in the White House and a lot of elected officials. But I would say that there are quite a few intelligence professionals in the West, in the U.S. and in UK, for example, and military that have seen the Ukrainians up close and realize the technical expertise that they have. I remember the first time when we delivered, I was still in the Army, and we delivered the Q-36 radar, which is a counter-fire radar, to Ukrainian armed forces. I think this was like 2016 probably. And we provided a few of these, and I was astounded how that radar was more effective than I realized. When you put it in the hands of Ukrainian soldiers that are under fire from Russian artillery and Russian rockets, they became very, very good. And the radar was better than I realized, to be honest. So since then, I've always assumed that Ukrainians were very good technically and creatively, and it's only gotten better. But I think probably people who don't pay close attention to this all the time have underestimated. Certainly the president and the vice president have, and other people around the president.
We also haven't heard any kind of statement from US President Donald Trump or even from Pete Hegseth, despite the fact that Pete Hegseth, according to CNN, received updates on Ukraine's operation as he traveled on to Joint Base Andrews on Sunday. President Trump has been persuading us that Ukraine haven't had any kind of cards. Do you feel that Trump could realize that Ukraine has some cards, as well as his national security team? Could this also be another turning point of his thinking?
Well, I wish it was, but I have zero confidence that this president is going to do anything meaningful to help Ukraine. Perhaps the reason that they have not commented, I don't know this, but they're trying to figure out what would they say. I mean, because this has proved that Ukraine is not going anywhere, that they're not going to collapse, that their defeat is not inevitable, and that Russia is, in fact, very vulnerable. And so, I saw several comments from people like Steve Bannon and Michael Flynn and I think Alex Jones and others who are MAGA, have been, pro-Kremlin all along, that are connected to the administration, at least unofficially. And they came out saying this was outrageous, that, they're trying to destroy Trump's dream of a peaceful outcome and all this nonsense. But I haven't seen anything from the administration. Now, of course, The U.S. got rid of, or the administration got rid of National Security Advisor Waltz. So Secretary Rubio has National Security Advisor and Secretary of State. They have not filled all the positions in the administration, including in the Department of Defense. So I think that they don't have enough people in place to do what needs to be done and to do the analysis and to think about it. And they've got knuckleheads that are the spokeswoman for the Department of Defense. It's terrible. And she's absolutely a Kremlin versteher supporter. So they probably are trying to figure out what the hell to say. And I think even some European countries also are not sure what to say because they were so surprised by this.
From your perspective, should US President Trump be ashamed of his comments that Ukraine doesn't have the cards, at least after this attack on Russia?
Yes, of course he should, but he has no shame. I think that the approach of the Trump administration from the beginning has been doomed to failure. They never understood the culture, the geography, the history, why Ukraine was fighting. They never could even say that Russia was the aggressor. They wanted Ukraine to give up land from the very beginning. I don't think that they actually care about Ukraine per se, and sovereignty and these kind of things. So, and then they put people that are incompetent, like Mr. Witkoff and General Kellogg, in charge of the negotiation. So, should they be ashamed? Of course. But the problem is that, they're on the wrong side of this conflict. It's not in the best interest of America. So, most of the Congress supports Ukraine, even the Republican members of this administration. I think because they're not motivated by moral principles, I think they don't know what to do on this.
Also, according to the Wall Street Journal, Trump's administration is considering to impose sanctions against Russia. Do you have any kind of expectations that this decision would be made by Trump and his team?
Well, of course they should. And he's been talking about it for months. He said 2 more weeks, 2 more weeks, 2 more, and they never do it. I don't know what they're waiting on. So I think that I have to say, unfortunately, and for me, it's embarrassing that I have no confidence that this administration is actually going to do it. Now, the Senate has put together a very, very strong sanctions package. And I saw today that the Speaker of the House, Mr. Johnson, says that many members of the Congress support it also. So what are they waiting on? I mean, they have enough that they could do it without the president, but I think that the Republican leadership would prefer to have the president, give the go-ahead to do this. And maybe he will. I mean, I'll be very happy to say that I was wrong if he does come out and say that they're going to do it. And you would think he would, because the Russians have mocked him. They've shown they have zero respect for this administration. So I don't know why he is not using all the leverage that he has.
Also, Ukraine has participated in another round of negotiations with the Russian team in Istanbul. However, Russia demanded unrealistic concessions from Ukraine. According to their so-called memorandum, they demanded full withdrawal of Ukrainian troops from its own 4 regions and also other unrealistic concessions from Ukraine. Do these negotiations have any kind of sense?
I have to say I'm impressed with the patience and the tolerance of the Ukrainian side to put up with this vulgar nonsense and these demands. I don't think anybody in Ukraine is surprised by the Russian approach. But I have confidence that the Ukrainian government knows how to do this, and if it's worthwhile to keep sending a team there to keep the door open or whatever, to make sure that nobody in Europe or the United States would say that Ukraine is not interested in negotiation. But that the maximalist position the Russians came in on Monday, not a surprise. Um, I suspect if it helps Ukraine get back any children and any wounded prisoners, maybe that's worthwhile.
Let's cover also Russia's war aims. According to Bloomberg, Vladimir Putin is confident that his army will be able to break through Ukrainian defense lines and capture the whole 4 regions of Ukraine until the end of this year, according to Bloomberg's sources close to Kremlin. Do you believe in that, and what are their chances to do so?
Yeah, I don't see that as a likely outcome. Of course, it's possible, and because Russia is willing to just keep feeding people into the fight, and they don't care about their own casualties, it's conceivable that they could keep trying to overwhelm Ukrainian defenders. But I don't see that happening. Assuming that Ukraine is able to continue to grow its own defense industry, and assuming that other countries continue to provide some support to Ukraine, even without the United States, um, then I think that it's hard to imagine a breakthrough. I mean, Russia does not have, as far as I can tell, they don't have the mobile forces, the capability that can do that. And because of the overwhelming numbers of drones that are out there, it's very difficult for anybody to move within 20 kilometers of the front line. So you'd have difficulty massing a force, even if you had it, to be able to break through and go somewhere. So it seems to me that what we're seeing now is what we're going to see for the rest of the year, unless something dramatic happens from the outside.
And also, do you believe that they can cross the Nepro River? Because Putin seems to believe in that. If you want to take the city of Kherson, you have to cross this maritime obstacles at Nepro River. What is your take on that?
Yeah, well, I think the Russians have shown they do not have the capability to conduct an effective river crossing. Every time they've tried, they've been crushed. So I almost hope they try again because the Ukrainians know exactly where they would come. They would be very vulnerable to any kind of drones. I mean, I just don't see it happening. Not at least not in the traditional sense. I mean, maybe there's a way to do certain things, and I'm not prepared to say that the Russians are too dumb to do it. I just don't see them having the capability to be able to do that. It's hard to imagine that.
Also, Vladimir Putin has ordered to create so-called buffer zone along the border with Ukraine. Russians have launched offensive inside the Sumy region. However, they have been halted. This offensive has been halted by the Ukrainian armed forces. What is your assessment of this battle inside the Sumy region of Ukraine?
Um, if as the lines become stabilized, then I think it just becomes as Ukraine continues to develop more and more long-range capabilities. You start hitting Russian headquarters, you hit Russian logistics, you hit Russian artillery and rocket launchers. So this so-called buffer zone will be a shell, will be hollow if the Ukrainians are able to destroy those kinds of targets. That's how you neutralize Russia's only advantage of mass. Plus, I think that Ukrainian special forces and Ukrainian intelligence are just operating at a different level than what the Russians are able to do. I mean, they're like different capability, innovation, and Russia from the beginning has proved to me that they cannot defend themselves. I mean, the Kursk operation last year, Ukraine crossed that border with no problem. What Ukraine has done going after Russian oil and gas infrastructure, the Russian general that was killed out in the outskirts of Moscow a couple of months ago by an exploding e-scooter. I mean, this is an amazing level of penetration that's as good as or better than what the Mossad did with the famous pager attack on the Hezbollah. I mean, Ukraine is, that's where the Ukrainians are.
And do you feel that Ukraine would be able to turn the tide in this war in the nearest future?
Um, as much as I want that, I don't see that happening unless there is some significant change externally, whether that's in the form of delivery of significant amounts of new capabilities or real economic pressure on Russia. The stopping of the so-called shadow fleet vessels coming out of the Baltic Sea and the Black Sea, and more destruction of the Russian oil and gas infrastructure so that they can no longer make the money that they need from sales to India and China. I mean, that would be real pressure. But it's going to take something like those two things, real significant quantity and quality of external support and real economic pressure will be what turns the tide finally, I think. Now, of course, nobody knows exactly what's going on inside Russia. I mean, it's not a transparent society. Um, I would never rule out the possibility of something happening inside the regime. We'll see. But I'm not assuming that's going to happen anytime soon.
Thank you, General Hodges, for your time and for your support.